The second week of the Australian Open wasn't just tennis. It was pure theater. Incredible storylines.
Madison Keys, you are a Grand Slam champion!
Gutsy performances.
Oh, stop it, Ben!
Disappointing reactions from the crowd.
Just from the standpoint of wanting to see more tennis.
Please, guys, don't boo a player when he goes out with injury.
And a sneak peek into the future. Last week in tennis was unforgettable and definitely one for the history books. The week started off with the remainder of the fourth round matches. Lorenzo Sonego casually adopted the role of the next-gen slayer. After taking down the high-flying Joao Fonseca in the second round, Sonego set his eyes on another teenager. This time, it was Lerner Teen. Although Teen pushed Sonego to 4 sets, Lerner was already physically compromised. And with a lot of mileage on his legs, Lerner saw his brilliant Australian Open campaign come to an end. But for Sonego, it was his first quarterfinal at a Grand Slam.
Lorenzo Sonego is into the last 8.
Sonego didn't have to face a top 50 player to get to the quarters, and 3 of the 4 players he faced came into the Australian Open outside the top 100. Sonego might have made the most of a weaker draw, but make no mistake, this man is one of the most insane shot makers out there. We saw yet another shot of the tournament contender against Shelton in the quarterfinal. This one was a ridiculous backspin volley. And an insane passing shot for good measure. However, Shelton reminded us once again that you can always count on him to rise to the occasion in a Grand Slam. Ben stifled Sonego with some insane knockout power and totally dominated the Italian on the 0-4 shot rallies. Shelton was landing more than 70% of his first serves and winning 75% of them. It was a serving clinic, and Sonego's incredible shot making just wasn't enough. A 4-set win for Shelton and a second Grand Slam semifinal for the American. Just one thing though. He was going to be facing the defending champion Sinner. Before the match, Sasha was asked how the semis between Shelton and Sinner was going to be. Here's what he said.
What's going to happen? Ben is going to serve 240 kilometers an hour, and Yannick is going to return that serve like it's coming at you with your butterflies.
It was a lighthearted comment, of course, but it ended up being the reality. Sinner started the match slowly with 2 backhand unforced errors. At the same time, Shelton was off to a flying start, hitting 2 winners in that first game to break Sinner right away. But fast forward to the 4th game, Shelton was the one making 3 unforced errors in a row to concede the break. A couple of easy holds followed, and Ben broke Sinner again to serve for the first set, but he failed to convert 2 set points. Sinner went on to win the tiebreak, and that was about as close as Ben got to take a set off Sinner. It was a 6-2 drubbing for the next 2 sets, and Sinner got the job done in straights.
Game, center match, Sinner.
Looking at the serve-return dynamics for the match, one thing was clear. Shelton's serve didn't bother Sinner much, just like Zverev said it would. Shelton won 57% of first serves, which happened to be the lowest in almost a century of career hardcourt matches. On the return, the difference between the best returner in the world and someone in the lower half of the top 50 in return was clear as day. To beat Sinner, Shelton would have needed to get a lot of his first serves in, but since that didn't happen, he had to be hitting more kick serves off his second. Now, here's the thing. Shelton has a massive kicker, and there's still a lot of motion on the ball. But it rarely even bothers Sinner, as we can see here. Should Shelton have thrown caution to the wind and hit 2 first serves? Maybe. Ben knew that he missed his chances in the first set, but the good news is that the semifinal against Sinner was yet another learning experience. Ben has now faced Yannick more than any other opponent in his career, and it's usually matches like this that come with a lot of lessons. Shelton has now reached the quarterfinals or further at 3 of the last 5 hardcourt slams. He'll have many more chances in the future, you can definitely tell. But what about Alcaraz? The 3rd seed fell to Novak in 4 sets, which would be disappointing for Alcaraz because Novak was injured after the first set. However, Alcaraz failed to push Novak, and he ended up paying the price as Novak put on yet another masterclass. The injury caused some limitations in his movement and forced Novak to play more aggressively, which is exactly what he needed to do to take care of business. In contrast, Alcaraz's level dropped and he just seemed to hold back a bit on some of his shots, which ended up leading to errors in both decision-making and execution. In terms of match dynamics, the second serve was the biggest differentiator, with Novak's win percentage at 58% compared to Alcaraz's 33%. This point at the end of the second set pretty much sums it all up.
How do you like that?
Djokovic was hunting down Alcaraz's second serves, the majority of which landed in the middle of the box or were hit wide on the ad side. Alcaraz's failure to change his second serve strategy was a problem. But for Novak, it was the exact opposite. He spread out the second serve quite nicely, either going bigger into the body on the second serve or hitting the slice serve out wide to Alcaraz's forehand. Alcaraz might have been disappointed in his performance this year, but he still has 2 more bites at the apple to become the youngest man ever to complete the career Grand Slam, either in 2026 or in 2027. But for Novak, it would be a 50th Grand Slam semifinal.
It's a 50th Grand Slam semi-final for Novak.
Not to mention that Djokovic had now earned 70 top 10 wins and 40 top 5 wins at slams. However, we were worried sick about the GOAT's injury and how it was going to affect his bid for a 25th major. Following his hard-fought victory, Djokovic had to cancel his practice sessions ahead of the semifinal against Zverev in a bid to get all the rest he needed for the match. Friday morning came, and Djokovic seemed to be moving okay early on. In fact, both players were pressing random buttons on the controller and giving us a total treat. However, Sasha came with a plan: to make the match as physically exhausting as possible for Djokovic, and while Djokovic managed to hang on for a while, he started slicing more and even hit a drop shot from the baseline. The first set went into a tiebreak, and facing a set point, Novak missed a routine put-away volley before pulling the plug.
It's over. Can you believe it?
It's the 14th retirement in Novak's career and the 7th for him in slams. Most of the previous retirements came when Djokovic was still struggling with his endurance. Over the years, Djokovic had become such a beast that he was beating top players and winning majors on one leg, so much so that fans got used to it and thought Novak was playing dirty gamesmanship tactics to distract opponents. We saw it at the French Open last year, and now some fans still think that Novak was faking injuries. What do they want from this man? How do you boo a player who's won 10 times on your stadium court? After the match, Sasha gave a classy interview lecturing the crowd on how to treat a player.
The very first thing I want to say is I know that everybody paid for tickets and everybody wants to see hopefully a great 5-set match and everything, but you got to understand, Novak Djokovic is somebody that has given this sport for the past 20 years absolutely everything of his life. If he cannot continue a tennis match, it really means that he cannot continue a tennis match.
Too bad Novak was compelled to put up an MRI of his hamstring tear just so that people would leave him alone. Say what you will about the man, but he deserves every last bit of respect for what he's done for the sport. For Djokovic's coach Andy, it would have been quite the comedic plot twist if Novak had won the Australian Open, considering that the same Novak denied Murray 4 times in the final in Melbourne. But in a week where players faltered and expectations crumbled, Jannik Sinner gave us a title run to remember. Sinner kicked off his second week by pouncing on Alex de Minaur for the 10th time. Going into the match, there were concerns about Sinner's fitness, maybe because he had skipped practice before his 4th-round match against Rune and was really struggling in Melbourne's heat. Sinner even called a medical timeout midway through the 3rd set against Rune, so it was clear as day that if de Minaur was going to trouble Sinner, he needed to make the game as physical as humanly possible. De Minaur came with the entire Aussie crowd on his side, but if history tells us anything, it's that certain matchups are nightmares for certain players. In their previous 9 meetings, de Minaur had only managed to take a set off Sinner, so we knew the chances of the Demon pulling off an upset were slim at best. Soon enough, the crowd got stunned into silence as Sinner absolutely demolished de Minaur with power, speed, and precision.
Yeah, that was Darren Cahill's happy face there.
A 10th straight defeat to Sinner, and a 6-3, 6-2, 6-1 beatdown to be precise. Can someone remind me again how Sinner manages to make top 10 players look bad on the tennis court? Well, as someone said, Sinner didn't invent tennis, but he is perfecting it. I'll say that much. After beating de Minaur and Shelton, Sinner became the youngest man to reach multiple Australian Open finals since Jim Courier in 1992 and 1993, and the reward for that was a championship match against a player determined to win his first Grand Slam. Alexander Zverev had rebuilt his career after suffering a serious ankle injury during his 2022 Roland Garros semifinal against Rafa, and he had started working with his fitness coach Jez Green again. Outside of Sinner, Zverev had arguably been the most consistent player on the tour. He got rid of the high-flying Tommy Paul in the quarterfinal, and judging from their head-to-head, it seemed like a winnable match for Tommy, but once the match started, it was a complete unraveling. Paul was playing like the top 10 player he now is, and had the chance to serve for both the first and second sets, at 6-5 in the first and 5-3 in the second. However, he failed to do so, and we saw Zverev pushing the pace in the ensuing tiebreaks. The German hit a combined 6 winners and did not produce a single unforced error in the tiebreaks. Paul's level dipped drastically, and he only won 1 point in each tiebreak. He did rebound though to take the third set, but the damage had already been done. Zverev sent the American packing after 3 hours and 28 minutes. Zverev only got to play a set against Novak in the semis, which meant that his preparation for the final wasn't ideal, but on the bright side, he was coming into the final with a lot less mileage than we're typically used to seeing. But was he going to get the monkey off his back this time? Zverev had the head-to-head advantage over Sinner, but hasn't really played Sinner since the Italian became the best player in the world. Well, things have since changed. Zverev now needed to go even bigger on the first serve, give max effort in the long and grueling rallies, and dominate the backhand-to-backhand exchanges instead of being passive. Now, all that is much easier said than done. Zverev did look like he was ready for his first slam title, and just judging from his body language, you could tell that there was some improvement in his mental game and management of his nerves. But Sunday was Sinner's day to shine. It didn't look like he played his very best tennis, and still, he managed to beat Zverev in straight sets. The first set was competitive, even though it appeared that Sinner was holding easier, but after much probing, Sinner finally broke Zverev in the 8th game after going to deuce 4 times. The battle was mostly won in the forehand-to-forehand exchanges, and the Italians served out the first set in style.
Game and first set.
Knowing that he was already behind the 8-ball, Zverev ramped up the aggression in the second set, hitting half of his winners in that set alone. And although the trade-off for playing outside his comfort zone was always going to be more unforced errors, it didn't matter because that was the only way through Sinner. At 5-6, 30 all, both men played an insane 21-shot rally, which ended up with Zverev failing to close it out at the net. It could have been set point for Sasha. Although Sinner made it difficult, Zverev not having enough quality at the net proved to be a major factor in the match. He won 14 out of 27 points at the net, which was never going to be enough to trouble Sinner. The second set went into a tiebreak, but with the score level at 4 all, a wicked net cord took the wind out of Zverev's sails. Jannik then went on to finish the set off with a forehand winner that caught the outside edge of the line. Talk about the tiniest of margins on both of those points. The third set came, and already disappointed from the second set, Zverev couldn't produce enough quality or even a single break point as Sinner successfully defended his title. I'll be dropping a video on Sinner's title run and a deeper analysis on the final match, so be sure to keep your eyes peeled for it. Anyways, on Sunday, January 26th, Jannik Sinner became only the 5th man to win 3 consecutive hardcourt Grand Slam singles titles in the Open era. The 3rd man not to face a single breakpoint in a Grand Slam final since 2000, after Roger Federer accomplished the feat at Wimbledon in 2003, and Nadal did the same at the 2017 US Open. On top of that, Jannik is also the 1st man in history to win 10 consecutive matches against top 10 players without losing a set. He's also notched 14 consecutive wins at the Australian Open, back-to-back Australian Open titles, and 21 consecutive wins in a row. Zverev had no answers on the day, and it's safe to say that Sinner's biggest opponent might just be the off-court saga, because on the court, no one is good enough. Maybe it could have been different if Alcaraz made it to the final, but to beat Sinner, you have to get there first. Zverev got to the final boss, but his return wasn't good enough against Sinner's serve. His relative lack of forehand quality and his tame approach shots didn't do him any favors either. Zverev admitted that Sinner was the better player after the match.
Yannick is better than me at the moment. It's as simple as that. I serve better than Yannick, and everything else he does better.
But he also mentioned that he was going to do everything possible to win a Grand Slam.
I don't want to end my career as the best player of all time to never win a Grand Slam, that's for sure.
On the women's side, things were a bit different. Earlier in the week, Elena Rybakina and Goran Ivanisevic ended their partnership, but I'm not going to comment on the Rybakina situation until we have all the facts right. Elsewhere, former world number 2 Paula Badosa admitted to mental health struggles after falling outside the top 100, but after reaching the semis of a Grand Slam for the first time in a run that saw her take down Coco Gauff in the process, Badosa will have a lot to be proud of.
Coming back from that, I'm really proud of the journey.
Still, a lot of the talk last week was about one of the most controversial moments in relation to Iga Swiatek. Swiatek hadn't conceded a single game on serve in 4 consecutive matches for the first time in her career, doing so against Stramkova, Raducanu, Lis, and Emma Navarro. Meanwhile, Emma was on a roll and had now made a 3rd consecutive major quarterfinal without necessarily playing her best tennis. However, the quarterfinal against Navarro didn't leave the best memories because of a double bounce in one of the most crucial moments of the match. We've been here before, guys. Who's to blame for the double bounce? The umpire who made the wrong call? The player not willing to admit it? Or both? It's 2025, and it's crazy that we don't have some technology that can recognize a double bounce on the court, or at the very least use VAR to review the point and overturn decisions when needed. The real blame should be aimed at the failure to make the most of the technology we already have. Anyway, it did look like we were finally going to get a Sabalenka-Swiatek Grand Slam final for the first time, after Sabalenka took down her best friend on tour in the semis. However, Madison Keys was on a mission to rewrite history, and no one was going to stop her. Keys brought on the heat against Iga in the semis with extreme pace that made it difficult for Iga to redirect balls. After losing the first set right at the death, Keys gave Iga a taste of her own medicine in the second set, and the stage was set for an epic battle. Both players threw everything at each other in the third. Madison Keys with the brutal firepower, and Iga with some insane returns of her own. Iga had a match point on her own serve, but we were witnessing a brand new Madison Keys. A player who is now fearless and ready to go to war. Facing match point, Keys hit a super aggressive return that drew out an error from Iga, before forcing her way into a super tiebreak. Despite trailing Iga for most of the tiebreak, Keys continued to trade blows with Swiatek from the baseline until she outlasted her opponent at the very end.
The win of her life.
But the job wasn't done yet. Keys was about to face the biggest test of her life in the final. She had been here almost a decade ago, but she crumbled under pressure and just couldn't get a hold of her nerves. Meanwhile, Sabalenka had been running everyone out of the building on hard courts, and she's become almost unbeatable at slams in the last 2 or 3 years. What was on the line for both players? I should also mention that Keys had lost a semifinal heartbreaker to Arena 16 months ago at the 2023 US Open and was left in tears.
Being able to, take this and turn it into a positive is really possible.
See, the thing with Maddie is that she's always had the talent and the physical gifts. She's one of the hardest hitters on tour and can take the racket out of anyone's hands. Hardly anyone can contain her power. Because of her gifts, Maddie has always had a chip on her shoulder, and for so long, it felt like she was going to be one of those players who just didn't live up to expectations. To rewrite the narrative, Keys had to make drastic changes and reinvent herself. First, she improved her return game and got more comfortable playing long rallies. Then, she locked in on her mental toughness and talked about how she trusted her shots more and was willing to go for broke when it mattered. She also mentioned that she no longer tied her self-worth to her performances on the court. On top of that, she made an equipment change, switching rackets from Wilson to Yonex to open up new possibilities later in her career. Not to mention that she had a new person in her corner, someone who wouldn't just be a coach, but a husband and partner in every sense of the word. Who was this man? Bjorn Fratangelo was a junior champion. He beat Dominic Thiem in the boys' singles final of the 2011 French Open. Although Fratangelo broke into the ATP Top 100 briefly, he never came close to replicating the success that he had at the junior level. Having been in a relationship with Keys for years, Fratangelo never really got involved until the middle of the 2023 season, when he traveled with her to Eastbourne after her former coach had left. Keys then hit new highs with Fratangelo, and he played a crucial part in convincing her to switch rackets after she withdrew from last year's Australian Open with shoulder issues. Fratangelo wanted her to use a racket that would be easier on her body due to the stage she was at in her career. Fratangelo also convinced Keys to stop using any old-school natural gut in her rackets, opting for full polyester instead. But he didn't stop at just changing her strings. Fratangelo helped Keys retool her service motion late last season, lowering the toss and making the rhythm a bit smoother. We then saw the changes pay quick dividends in Adelaide, but the Australian Open was a different test. Keys had to go through some of the toughest players in Danielle Collins, Rybakina, Alina Svitolina, and Iga Swiatek en route to the final. In the final, Keys got off to a flying start, while Sabalenka got off to the worst possible start, with 2 double faults in the opening game and errors off the forehand to give Keys the early break. Keys, on the other hand, was going for crispy clean winners off both wings while keeping her defense on point. The result was a double break, and although Keys had some hiccups while serving for the set, she quickly shook it off in the next game by ripping a backhand down the line to take the first set. However, in the second, Sabalenka showed why she's truly the number one by bringing a lot of variety to her game, repeatedly mixing up the height and pace of the ball to throw Keys off her rhythm. Sabalenka used the drop shot to great effect, and soon the match was level at 1-set-all. The third set was a war of attrition. Keys knew Sabalenka wasn't going to hand over the title to her, so she went for her shots without any fear. The down-the-line backhand was insanely good. And in the all-important game at 5-6, Keys dialed up her game another notch. First with another down-the-line backhand winner, and then an absolute missile off the forehand. Just like that, the job was done. And boy did she have to do it the hard way, defeating both the world number 1 and world number 2 players en route. Not once did Keys hit a double fault in the final. It doesn't get more clutch than that. Keys also became only the 4th player to win a women's singles major by defeating 4 top 10 seeded opponents in the Open era. Keys is only a few days away from her 30th birthday, and she already has 8 top 20 wins this year. It's safe to say that no one will ever forget what Madison Keys did in January 2025. As far as ranking updates go, this is what the current top 10 on the ATP Tour looks like. The top 4 maintain their spots, Casper and Novak both leapfrog Medvedev, as Tommy Paul makes his top 10 debut. It's going to be new career highs for these guys. The top 4 also maintain their spots on the WTA, but the gap between Sabalenka and Iga is now less than 200 points. Rybakina moves on to 5th place, while Madison Keys re-enters the top 10 to make it 4 American women in the top 10. Paula Badosa is also back in the top 10, and judging from what we've seen, she's here to stay. It's also going to be new career highs for these other women. The ATP 250 in Montpellier is underway, and the top seeds Andrei Rublev, Felix Auger-Aliassime, and Alexander Bublik will all be looking to rebound from their disappointing Australian Open campaigns. We also have the first round of the Davis Cup qualifiers taking place, and it should serve as a nice little change of pace from the highs of the Australian Open. Over on the WTA side, we have 2 events to keep an eye on: the WTA 500 in Linz, Austria, and the Singapore 250. We expect to see Karolina Muchova aim for her first WTA title since her maiden crown in 2019. Alina Svitolina will also be looking to continue her strong form. Marketa Vondrushova, Maria Sakkari, and Belinda Bencic are all expected to be back in action as well. Jetting off to Singapore, it's a happy return to the WTA Tour calendar for the first time in over 6 years. Anna Kalinskaya leads a field that features Emma Raducanu, Elise Mertens, and Sofia Kenin. Last week was everything I expected and more. You can keep up with all the action here on Courtside Tennis by smashing that subscribe button. Don't forget to sign up for our weekly newsletter where we send you quick digestible updates, making it just a little bit easier to follow the tour. And I want to try something new. Drop comments below that you want me to answer, and whichever one gets the most likes, I'll respond to it in next week's recap. Until next time, keep going for the lines.